Can I stay here for one night? The orc woman asked. I replied, I only have one bed. What she revealed before dawn left me stunned. The rain had been falling since noon, and by midnight it had turned into something heavier, the kind of rain that did not tap on the roof so much as press down on it, steady and relentless, as if the sky had made up its mind. Ethan Calloway sat at the small wooden table near the fireplace, turning an empty cup in his hands. The fire was low. He had not bothered to add more wood because there was no one to warm but himself, and he had long since stopped caring about comfort for its own sake. His inn, a small, square building he called the Low Lantern, sat at the edge of the Ashvale forest, on a road that connected two kingdoms still figuring out how to be at peace with each other. The war between humans and orcs had ended 14 months ago after 4 decades of fighting. The peace treaty had been signed. The armies had gone home. But people on both sides still walked carefully around each other, the way you walk around something broken on the floor, not wanting to step on it, not quite ready to clean it up. Ethan did not think much about the war. He thought about his inn, his firewood, his nearly empty pantry. He thought, sometimes, about Clara, the woman whose portrait hung above the fireplace, young and laughing, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. She had been gone 2 years now. A fever, the kind that came fast and left no room for goodbye. He still talked to the portrait sometimes, late at night when the inn was quiet. Not long conversations. Just small things. The way you might mention something to someone who is standing in the other room. Tonight he had nothing to say. He only sat and listened to the rain. That was when the knock came. It was not a loud knock. It was 3 steady taps, the kind made by someone who was not sure they had the right to knock at all. Ethan set down his cup. He looked at the door for a moment, then stood and crossed the room. He opened the door and the cold came in all at once. Standing on the porch was a woman. She was an orc, gray-green skin, broad shoulders, amber eyes that caught the dim light from inside the inn. She was tall. A full head taller than him, at least. Her dark cloak was soaked through, pressed flat against her arms. Her boots were caked with mud past the ankle. She had a leather satchel across one shoulder and she held a small iron box against her chest with both hands, the way you might hold something that could not be replaced. Ethan's hand tightened on the doorframe, just for a second. He noticed it and let go. The orc woman looked at him carefully, the way someone looks when they are trying to decide something. Can I stay here for one night? She asked. Her voice was low and even. There was no plea in it. It was a simple question, delivered plainly. I have rooms, Ethan said. I have no money, she replied. He looked at her. She did not look away. Most people, when they said something like that, looked at the floor or at their hands. She did not. She held his gaze with a kind of steady patience that was not quite pride but was something close to it. He began to close the door. Her hand did not move to stop it. She simply lifted the iron box slightly and said, I can leave this. As payment. Until I find work and return for it. She still did not look him in the eye when she said that. It was the first time she had looked away, and for some reason that small detail was what stopped him. He did not know what was in the box. He did not ask. He stepped aside and let her in. She came through the door quietly, leaving a trail of muddy water across the stone floor. She stood in the center of the common room and looked around, the low fire, the wooden tables, the portrait above the mantel, with the careful eyes of someone who was always checking exits. I only have one bed, Ethan said. She looked at him. The inn has 4 rooms, he explained, but one has a ceiling that came down last spring and I haven't fixed it. One has a broken window, tonight you'd be sleeping in the rain. The third one I use for storage. He paused. So. 1 bed. She looked toward the narrow couch near the fireplace. I will sleep there, she said. The couch has a broken leg. It tips to the left. I've been meaning to fix it for 6 months. She looked at the floor. I will sleep on the floor, she said. You don't have to do that. I have slept on worse. There was no complaint in her voice. She said it the way someone might say the sky is gray, as a simple fact about the world. Ethan looked at the ceiling for a moment. Then he crossed the room and pulled the spare mattress from the storage cupboard beneath the stairs. He dragged it near the hearth, closer to the warmth, and set it down. You take my room upstairs, he said. I'll sleep down here. That is too much, she said. It is not charity, he said. The mattress is here. The room upstairs is empty and has a working door. It is just the sensible arrangement. He looked at her. You are soaked through. Your boots need drying. There is a hook by the fire. Please use it. She was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded once and said, "Thank you." He put more wood on the fire. While she hung her cloak and set her boots near the warmth, Ethan went to the small kitchen at the back of the inn and heated up what was left from supper, lentil soup, thick and still good, and the end of a loaf of bread he had baked 2 days ago. He brought it to the table and they ate together, though he was not sure why. He could have left the food and gone to bed. Instead, he sat across from her and had a second cup of tea he did not need. She set the iron box on the table beside her bowl. Her hand rested near it throughout the meal. She never touched it, but she never moved it far either. It was small, no bigger than a loaf of bread, with a plain latch and no lock. Ethan noticed all of this and said nothing. She noticed the portrait above the fire. He saw her eyes move to it and stay there for a moment. She said nothing either. They ate in silence. It was not an uncomfortable silence. It was the kind that settles between two people who have both learned not to fill every empty space with words. When they finished, she carried her bowl to the kitchen without being asked. He did not comment on it. He showed her the room upstairs, simple, with a narrow bed, a wool blanket, and a small window that faced the forest. She thanked him again, the same way she had before, plainly, without performance. He went back downstairs, lay down on the mattress near the fire, and pulled his coat over himself. He did not sleep. He stared at the ceiling and listened to the rain and thought, without wanting to, about Clara. He thought about the way she had once said that grief was just love with nowhere left to go. He had not understood it then. He thought he understood it better now, after 2 years of walking around an empty inn with a portrait on the wall and a couch he kept meaning to fix. The fire burned down slowly. He watched the shadows move on the ceiling. Sometime after 3 in the morning, he could not say exactly when, he heard movement upstairs. Soft footsteps. Then the creak of the stairs. He did not sit up. He waited. The orc woman appeared in the doorway of the common room. She was dressed, her satchel over her shoulder, the iron box in her arms. She stopped when she saw that he was awake. "I did not mean to wake you," she said. "You didn't," he said. She stood in the doorway for a moment, neither coming in nor going back up the stairs. Then she said, quietly, "I cannot sleep. May I sit by the fire?" He moved aside to make room on the other side of the hearth. She came in and sat down, setting the iron box in her lap. He added a piece of wood to the fire. They both watched the flame catch. For a long while, neither of them spoke. The rain had softened. It was still falling, but gently now, tapping against the windows like a patient visitor. Then she spoke. She did not start at the beginning. She started in the middle, the way people do when they have been carrying a story for so long that they cannot find the beginning anymore. She said she had been a soldier. An officer, near the end of the war. She had served for 11 years. She said this without pride and without shame, again, just as a fact. The war had ended while she was still in the field. Word came down the line on a cold morning, the treaty was signed. They were to stand down. She remembered the silence that followed the announcement. No cheering. Just soldiers standing in a field, looking at each other, trying to remember what came next. What came next, for Mara, was supposed to be home. She said the word home, and something in her face changed. Not much. Just around the eyes. Her village was a 2-week walk from where she had been stationed. She had walked it before, after other long stretches away, and she knew the road well. She knew where the path curved around the old stone bridge. She knew which tree marked the last hill before you could see the smoke from the cooking fires. When she came around that last hill, there was no smoke. There were no cooking fires. She found the ruins on a gray morning in early autumn. The village had been attacked, not by humans, she was careful to say, but by an orc faction that had refused to accept the peace. They believed the treaty was a surrender. They had decided that those who accepted it were enemies. They had moved through the borderland villages like a cold wind, and by the time Mara arrived, they had been gone for weeks. She walked through what was left. She did not find anyone alive. She found her brother's house, or what remained of it. He had been younger than her by 6 years. His name was Davin. He had not been a soldier. He had made furniture and kept a small garden and sent her dried herbs wrapped in cloth whenever she was stationed somewhere cold, because she had once mentioned, years ago, that the smell of dried thyme reminded her of home. She found the herbs in a jar by the window, still intact. And in the room where he slept, under a fallen beam, she found a wooden box. Inside it were letters. 21 of them, she said. Written on folded pages in her brother's handwriting, dated across the 3 years before his death. Addressed to her. Never sent. She did not know why he had not sent them. Maybe he had thought he would deliver them in person one day. Maybe he had written them only to write them, the way people sometimes talk to someone who is not in the room. She had read them all on the road, over many nights. She opened the iron box and looked at them now, without taking them out. Just looked. Then she closed the latch again. He wrote about ordinary things, she said. The garden. A dog that kept coming to his door. The time the roof needed patching and he fixed it himself. He was very proud of that. A pause. He also wrote that he was afraid, sometimes. That the war felt very large and very close even from far away. He wrote that he hoped I was eating enough. She was quiet for a moment. He wrote, in the last letter, that he thought the war might end soon. He said he had a feeling. He said when I came home we would sit outside and he would make his grandmother's recipe, a thick stew with root vegetables, and we would not talk about anything difficult. We would just sit and eat and let the day be simple. She stopped. She pressed her lips together. Ethan did not say anything. He got up quietly, filled her cup from the pot on the stove, and set it in front of her. Then he sat back down. She looked at the cup. Then she said, I have been walking for 4 months. I do not know where I am going. I only know that if I stop, I have to feel it. He understood that completely. He looked at the fire for a while. Then he told her about Clara, not the whole story, only the shape of it. The fever. How fast it had come. How he had kept the inn running afterward because it was the only thing that made sense to do when nothing made sense. How he had not fixed the couch or the window or the ceiling because there was no urgency in an empty inn, and urgency had been the only thing keeping him moving for a long time. He told her about the portrait. How he had put it up because the wall had looked wrong without something there, and then had never been able to take it down. Mara listened the way she did everything, quietly, carefully, without rushing him. When he finished, she said, she looks kind. In the painting. She was, he said. They sat together as the fire burned and the rain softened further and the night slowly began to run out of itself. At some point the darkness at the windows turned from black to a deep gray blue, and Ethan realized he had no idea how much time had passed. He also realized, somewhere in the middle of it all, that he had not felt alone for the past several hours. He was not sure when that had changed. He had not noticed it happen. It had happened the way warmth happens, not all at once, but gradually, until you realize you have stopped being cold. When the first pale light came through the windows, Mara stood. She picked up the iron box and held it in the crook of her arm. She looked rested, he thought. Not fully, not the way sleep rests a person, but in the way that telling a thing to someone else rests you, even just a little. Like setting down something heavy, if only for a moment. I should go before the roads get busy, she said. You don't have to leave the box, he said. The room was empty. I wasn't using it. She paused. She looked at him for a moment with those amber eyes, and then she said something he had not expected. Thank you, she said, for not asking about it. All evening. The box. Most people would have asked. He shrugged. It wasn't my business. No, she said. But most people make it their business anyway. She held the box a little closer. It matters. That you didn't. He nodded. He walked her to the door. The air outside was cool and clean after the long night of rain. The road was muddy and the forest beyond it was dark and still, but the sky was beginning to lighten in the east. The east road is better than the west road this time of year, he said. If you're heading toward the valley. She looked at him. How do you know where I am going? I don't, he said. But the east road is better regardless. Fewer ruts. Drier ground. She looked at the east road for a moment. Then she turned back to him, and for the first time since she had knocked on his door, something moved across her face, small and brief, like a shadow going the other way. Almost a smile. Thank you, Ethan, she said. He had not told her his name. He realized she must have seen it on the sign by the door, the one that said the Low Lantern, Ethan Calloway, proprietor. He had forgotten the sign was there. Safe road, he said. She turned and walked east. He stood in the doorway and watched until the morning mist took her, her broad shoulders, her cloak, the iron box tucked close, and then she was gone, and there was only the road and the trees and the gray quiet of early morning. He went back inside. The common room felt different somehow. He could not say exactly how. It was the same room, same fire burning low, same portrait on the wall, same table with 2 empty cups. But something had shifted overnight, the way furniture shifts when you have moved it and put it back, close to the same position but not quite exactly the same. He picked up the 2 cups and carried them to the kitchen. He washed them slowly, listening to the birds begin outside in the forest. Then he went to the storage cupboard and found his toolbox. He carried it upstairs. He stood in the room with the broken window, the one he had been meaning to fix for months, and he looked at it for a moment. The wood was warped along the bottom. The latch was rusted. It was a small, fixable problem. It had only ever been a small, fixable problem. He set down his toolbox, rolled up his sleeves, and began to work. Outside, the sun was coming up. The road was empty and bright with morning light, and somewhere to the east, a woman was walking toward the valley with 21 unsent letters pressed against her chest, moving through a world that had taken everything from her, still moving, still carrying, still going. He did not know if he would ever see her again. He thought, maybe, that was all right. He tightened the first bolt and felt it hold.